With the recent election results in New South Wales, Aston, and with Labor in power throughout most of Australia at state and federal level, Liberal is dying out. Does the Liberal Party even have a future in Australia?
Nice easy one for you, Greg.
Oh, right off the bat. Of course it does. I had a look today, you know, we've actually been in this position before several times. In 1982-3, we were, you know, counted out. We came back in 2007. Yeah,
the Hawke government was in power for a very long time.
It was. But when we came back, you know, it was quite strong. And in 2007, when Kevin Rudd won, it was pretty much wall-to-wall Labor, but it didn't take long, and it was wall-to-wall Liberals. So that's the first thing I'd point out. But the Liberal Party is alive and well. We've got a lot of work to do, though.
Where is it going wrong?
In my view, and I make no secret of this, I've said this quite often in recent years, the Liberal Party has stood still. We haven't actually evolved to really, we haven't adapted to the social media age. That's the first thing. So, you know, our values haven't changed, but the policies that we need for the future aren't there. And that's the primary task for us, is to develop those.
Deni, you were nodding along to that.
I was doing little quick snaps like this. I think that I'm very much of the belief system that whether you vote for Liberal, Labor, Greens, really I could care less as long as it's not Donald Trump. It's all about intention, and I think intention-led leadership is something that this country, skirt thing, jewellery, this country is really missing. So we had a little chat just then backstage, and this was the first time I ever voted Greens, and previously I'm from a Labor family, but my family were Jehovah's Witness for 10 years where they don't actually vote. So I got to make my first vote at 21 and I voted Labor. So my issue with the Liberal Party is that the definition of Liberal comes from liberation, and there's no liberation in a party that doesn't speak to the future generations of this country. So I think we need a little Liberal rebrand, honey. If you want to get the...
Yes, I agree.
Rosie, I might just come back to you. You'll be voting in a few years from now. As you start to make up your mind, what would you be looking for if the Liberals were to win your vote?
Definitely more climate action. I think the recent election has been motivated by the need for climate action for Australia, as it's crucial for all of our futures.
Greg.
Look, when I said that the Liberal Party has not adapted to the social media age, this is actually the classic point. Because in the social media world, the climate change debate was done and dusted years ago. And yet in our party, we've had people that still want to argue about whether they're a believer or a denier. It doesn't matter, right? And in my view, and sort of letting you in on a bit of my thinking on this, the Liberal Party actually needs to hurdle it. Because the solutions for the future don't lie in an ongoing debate about climate change. They lie in planning for our best environmental policy. That's where the solutions lie, because if we're going to have a sustainable power system going forward, and this connects to everything, it connects to environment, it connects to resources, it connects to agriculture, right? I believe the Liberal Party needs to position itself with policy that says we know the true environmental cost, and we will have policy to address that, and that's where I think we need to go.
I want to go to Sara and Osman in just a moment, but I'll just ask you this, Greg. We're hearing about the issues. You're talking about standing still, or not being able to keep up, or not being able to speak to people like Rosie. What about issues like the voice to Parliament? Now, Federal Parliament is going to be meeting this week on this. There have been a lot of questions asked. Nationals have said no. The Liberals have still not put out a definitive position. Is that one of these litmus test issues that the Liberal Party is going to be judged on, depending which way it goes?
I think it possibly will be.
And so which way do you believe the Federal Party should lean?
Well, the first thing, I think the party room is meeting on Wednesday to determine whether it will be a conscience vote. If I were there, I think I'd be leaning toward a conscience vote. But I think it's important to remember too, that it was actually the Liberal Party that actually started this process. And there is plenty of support within the Liberal Party for the voice. But, you know, Peter Dutton was around when we didn't know what the wording of Kevin Rudd's apology was going to be.
He also wasn't there for that apology,
right.
which
no,
he
that's
subsequently
exactly right.
apologised for.
That's exactly right. But so his memory is that says to him, I want to know what Anthony Albanese is going to put in it. This is different. This is constitutional change. And we need to know what it is.
Is it also
Well, that information is out there.
Yes,
I
it
mean,
is.
there is a bill in the Parliament. There's an explanatory memorandum. The question has now been settled, and the text is there. And I think one of the problems, and I think what you're really saying is how important it is for the Liberal Party to engage in debate. Unfortunately, from a parliamentary level, and it goes much further than social media.
I agree.
There hasn't been a proper engagement. The Liberal Party's been reactionary to all the agenda that the government's had in the Parliament. And so that reactionary, just saying no, isn't sitting well with people. That's certainly the feedback I get.
I think. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. I think that, like, with respect, referring to a generation as a social media generation is so incredibly condescending, when just because we've existed in a world with social media, it means that we're more informed, it means we're more engaged, but it doesn't make us a social media generation. I think we're an intention-led generation, and I think that the Liberal Party could do with more people of varying ages, diverse groups, gender identities in their party to better reflect, because my parents are boomers, and the boomers are going to go soon, and then it's like all up to Gen Z and millennials to run the world.
Can I just pick up on that?
Hopefully not too soon. I'm sitting here thinking he's counting me out. They're counting me out already.
But just to pick you up, to correct, I did not
let's do
say
it.
that. What I said, in a social media world.
Sure.
And that's a very different thing.
Can I go to Sarah? I want to go to the next question, Simone. But Sarah, you're watching this, and there must be... this must be chiming with what you see in the United States, where we've seen increasing polarisation in politics and the Republicans turning to Donald Trump for a way back to office.
Yeah, and when you talk about reinvention, that's absolutely happening on the American stage. And the Republicans are a different party from the party of Ronald Reagan. They're a different party from the party of 15 years ago. I think what we need to understand is that parties are people. They're ideas and they're people. And as people are changing, as the issues that they care about are changing, then the parties are reflecting that. And this isn't exactly something that's brand new. If you go back in American history and you take a look, you're going to come up with some names of parties that you've never even heard of. The Free Soil Party. I mean, the Copperhead Democrats, they were the peace Democrats, and by peace, they didn't want the Civil War to be prosecuted to the end. They're gone. Those dinosaurs are out the door. There are parties that have disappeared, and they disappeared because they didn't have the right message for the times, and things altered. So that's what's happening. Sometimes it happens in ways that you appreciate and really like. Sometimes it's something you want to say goodbye to. But they're ongoing organisms that reflect the people.
Osman, one of the things that Rosie had raised, one of the issues Rosie had raised was the issue of climate. And all around the world we've seen this as being a definitive issue of the times. And there's been criticism of both sides of major politics in this, particularly from the Greens, hasn't there?
Yeah, I mean, I think climate, Deni made the point about the Liberal Party not having a message that it can use to connect with younger Australians. I think climate is a huge part of that. I think the really interesting thing, despite the fact that the Liberals were in power federally for a decade, in New South Wales for over a decade, the country shifted in a way that I don't think they've quite realised. The country's become younger, more diverse, more cosmopolitan, and more desperate for the need to take serious action on climate change. I think the Liberal Party, the coalition, have basically dealt themselves out of that by playing a completely non-existent role for the last decade. And that's now, I guess, given Labor the opportunity to do something. You know, I've got my own views on how effective they're going. I think today the numbers came out that showed that Australia is going to be exporting 70% more coal by 2028 than when Kevin Rudd signed the Kyoto Protocol in 2008. That's a pretty damning stat, and I think that goes to the fact that it's not just the coalition that is potentially out of step with where Australians are on climate, but I think all political parties have a lot more to do there.